It's Jenny Pell from Growers Magazine, and I'm here in Haiku, Maui today with Will Grinnell from deepgreengenetics.com. And today we're going to talk about legalization of cannabis in the state of Hawaii and what's going on internationally with other countries and how they're turning that into living wage jobs. So how long have you been on Maui for, Will?
14 years now.
Yeah, and how long have you been in the cannabis industry?
I've been working with cannabis and farming for 50 years. This year I celebrate my 50th year. I started in 1973. Basically from that point on I've been growing intentionally and breeding cannabis for many different reasons, but where I started off was in the Northeast, and so a lot of the strains we were getting back then were of course Colombians and Jamaicans and so forth. And we had to learn, when we found something that would flower early enough in that environment, how to recreate it. And that's how I learned to get involved with it.
Right. Well, as a younger teen smoking marijuana, I was definitely doing, Panama Red, Acapulco Gold. I remember the good old days of that.
What fun.
Well, what we want to talk about today is what's going on with the state of legalization of cannabis in the state of Hawaii. We're watching 19 states across the country go legal, and we're also seeing other countries adopt, really brand new June 2023 laws legalizing cannabis and watching their industries flourish. And we want that for Maui as well. So what's the state of legal cannabis in Maui?
Well, the state of Hawaii is definitely very behind, and it's such an amazing opportunity that is in front of us. I mean, there's really two words that breaks it down. It's agricultural legacy and branding. So I guess that's three words really, but that says it all about Hawaii. We could be the top cannabis brand, and the international cannabis trade is now a real thing. There's quite a few countries that are already participating, Canada included. They export medical cannabis. Where are we at here in Hawaii? That's an interesting question. We haven't seen any favorable bills go through. A lot of cannabis legalization bills have hit the floor in the past few years, in the past few sessions. The last one was a pretty good example as to how Hawaii has been heading with their legislative bills, and it was a terrible bill. It was in favor of large farm only, not promoting jobs, but promoting keeping it corporate.
Right, and you're a co-founder of the Maui Cannabis Guild, and I think one of your charters is trying to safeguard rights and access to smaller growers so that the big players don't come in and just gobble up the market when it inevitably does become legal.
Yeah, small farm, especially with cannabis. Cannabis is a artisanal craft. It really is. I've seen the large cannabis grows in California and Washington, and they cannot produce the kind of craft cannabis that smaller farmers can. I've also seen examples in Colombia where the large farms and the small farmers can exist side by side if the branding is done right and so forth. But letting the small farms get traction first is very important.
Right.
And that creates the most jobs at the end of the day too. I mean, places like Colorado that have brought in over $4 billion in taxes through legalization, it wasn't done by having a small amount of corporate owners. It was done by allowing a cannabis industry to thrive, therefore creating businesses and lots of employees that could pay these taxes that created that revenue.
So I'm watching in Thailand, for example, they legalized cannabis just this month. And in a month, there's 1,000 new cannabis businesses catering to tourists. And I was reading about that this morning, and they said that 50% are locals and regulars, and 50% are tourists. So it's not just a tourist industry, it's also a local industry. And that it's dignified, living wage jobs, tourism dollars, all that stuff. And it's also really kickstarting their agricultural industry at the same time. One of the things I've heard discussed here is, what if we were to do mandate that in the cannabis grow it was 60% cannabis and 40% food? Is that something that's been talked about, or is that just something I'm hearing through the coconut
It is. A few years ago when the Maui Cannabis Guild was active full time, that was one of the legislative bills that we were working on. And one of the frameworks within it was what we simply called the Farm Bill. And it was that if you were going to be a participant in the cannabis industry here in the state of Hawaii, and you were going to go larger than, say, a backyard footprint, and you were going to do it commercially, well, then a certain part of that footprint it needs to be for food as well. You've committed to being a farmer.
Right.
And cannabis is a big part of that, and that helps subsidize being a food farmer as well, because normally a food farmer can't afford to buy property here in Maui and grow just a food crop. So it is a very good pairing.
Right. Well, and the nature of tourism itself is changing. So the Hawaiian Tourism Authority, the HTA, has been 2 years in a row lost significant funding, and they're changing it from promoting Maui, which really doesn't need any promotion internationally, to managing tourism. And I'm really curious to see how the HTA is going to get on board with promoting boutique cannabis, because driving tourism business to these smaller growers, these smaller experiences, that we know that we'd have a huge international draw. It could be such a boon for our economy.
Oh yeah, yeah. Cannabis tourism's just about to blow up all over the place, and there's certain countries that are focusing on just that. It's a win-win. I mean, cannabis tourists are the best. They tip better than most people. They don't get in fights. A lot of them, lion's share, don't drink much.
Right.
I've traveled all over this country for cannabis events, in particular expos and conventions and so forth, and now most recently internationally. And the communities there, the taxi drivers, the local restaurants, everyone expresses that the cannabis community is the best. It's their favorite for all those reasons.
Right.
So, you know, we're good consumers, and on down the line.
How soon do you think we're going to see legalized cannabis in the state of Hawaii?
That's a tough question. We've been faced with it so long, but I think for the very first time that the lawmakers' ears are open, because it's too big of an issue, it's too big of a currency for them not to hear it anymore.
Right.
So I think they really are ready to hear some of the examples of legalization. I mean, there's so much good data out there about how it works economically, socially, less drug addiction in all the communities where cannabis is legalized. You know, opiate. Right. Use is down a giant percentage. So that data is getting to the lawmakers now. They can't avoid it anymore. And I believe that their ears are open, and something could happen sooner than later. Saying that for Hawaii, sooner than later, still could be a few years. We're out of the international trade right now. I've sat at roundtables with international traders in Colombia and at these conventions around this country. And of course, Hawaii's the #1 brand. We could be in the world.
Wow.
We're the $1 trillion baby.
Right.
We literally are, and the other brands recognize this. South Africa being a brand, Colombia being a brand. You know, these are already participants in the international cannabis scene.
Right.
If our lawmakers really could get a grasp on it and the $1 trillion baby, and just how low-hanging a fruit it really is for us here in Hawaii, to bring in a cannabis industry ASAP, and a lightly regulated small farm, every little backyard could be doing something. Yep, I mean, agricultural legacy and branding, we're there. We don't need a publicist.
Right.
You know, we have some of the best growers in the world here operating in the green or black market, whatever you want to call it now. And I know a lot of people have concerns about that. Black market money has kept these communities alive. Haiku and little towns like this.
Right.
There's a cannabis currency, and it's strong. And that's one reason lawmakers across the country are bringing legalization in state by state. It's not because they're feeling strong memories of their frat boy days when they did a bong rip. It's because they see it's a cannabis currency. It's dollars and cents. They have to accept this in.
Right.
And if Hawaii did that, it would be tremendous.
Well, and don't the states get to choose what they do with their taxation of the industry? So I know that in Colorado they tied it to schools, for example.
Yeah.
We've been trying for years to get a green fee passed here, and a green fee it's a tourist tax. You know, in the country of Palau, every tourist that visits pays a $100 green fee, and it goes towards pristine Palau. When you go on an adventure, you hire a local guide, so it's like living wage jobs in this tourism industry. But if we could tax the cannabis here and have it go to watershed restoration, reef protection, fish ponds, Hawaiian indigenous agriculture, I think that would be also a great way to not get priced out of paradise for locals.
Yeah, and if we actually did integrate that in and have a cannabis currency and industry here, all those issues would have money and would be taken care of. There would be reef restoration, there would be watershed protection, because the funding would be there.
Right.
It's a guarantee.
Well, I look look forward to learning more about what's going on in the state of Hawaii. I'd like to see it happen sooner rather than later. I can see these other countries and other places basically snapping up the industry, and I feel like our state's getting left behind.
Considering we're one of the top brands in the world and we're recognized as so, yeah, we're really missing out.
One of the legal things you can do in Hawaii is sell seeds, correct?
Correct, in all 50 states.
Right. So you can go online, deepgreengenetics.com, and you can get sticky finger seeds and a variety of products.
A very cool collection of craft breeders. Certainly we have a Hawai'i group as well.
All right, thanks, Will. I really appreciate
Thank you,
your time.
Jenny. Aloha.